So let us have a look at understanding percentages. Okay. This is the part that I started with last time that we've clearly have to repeat. Okay. So percent is a Latin term, and it means parts per 100. That's physically what it means. So there you have a square. In that square, it is divided into 100 smaller squares of 10 by 10. And what I have done is I colored 15 of the blocks green, 25 of the blocks blue, and the remainder is a pink orange color there. Okay. So if you have 15 of the 100 blocks that are green, it means 15 parts per 100 is green, and therefore it's 15%. And the same for the blue. If 25 out of the 100 blocks is blue, then you have 25% blue blocks. Now the whole thing in the whole block represents 100% of the block. Okay, so there's 100 little blocks there, so that's 100% or 1. Remember, 100% and 1 is the same thing. So if we take the 100% and we subtract the 15% for the green and the 25% for the blue, then we are left with 60%, and so we can know that 60% of the squares or of the blocks are indeed orange. Okay. Now, when we convert percentages and we want to convert the percentage to a decimal, we simply divide by 100 and we remove the percentage sign. So 100%, just to illustrate to you that it is true, is 100 divided by 100. Remove the sign, leaves you with 1. 75% is 75 parts of 100, or 75 divided by 100 leaves you with 0.75. But we get the same effect if we move the comma 2 places to the left. Okay. If we start with a decimal and we want to turn it into a percentage, we do it the other way around. We multiply by 100 and we add the percentage sign. So there you have 0.25, and we multiply it by 100, then we get 25, and we add the percentage sign. I also wanted to show you that a decimal can be a decimal with an integer in it. So there you have 2.45, and if you change that to a percentage, it will be 245%. And again, we get the same effect by moving the comma 2 places to the right this time. Okay. You already know how to convert decimals to fractions because we did it, and how to convert fractions to decimal. So we can use decimal conversion to convert between percentages and fractions. The old rule apply that if A equals B and B equals C, then A must equal C. So if there's something in the middle and that thing in the middle is a decimal, then we can also change a percentage to a fraction. Okay. Now we sit here with the idea of how does it look if we have to calculate a percentage of something. Okay, so 100% means all. If you give 100%, you are giving your all. If somebody claims that you are able to give more than 100%, they lie. You can never give 110% because if you are a runner and you give 100%, you are giving all. You can't give more than all. Okay, so 100% means all. So therefore, 100% of 1 is 1. 100% of 1 million is 1 million. 100% of X is X. Okay. Now, percentage, I already said to you, means a part out of 100 or out of 100. And of always mean multiply. So 50% of 1 means 50 divided by 100 times 1, and that is 0.5. 25% of a million means 25 divided by 100 multiply for the of a million gives you 250,000. Okay, so how does it now work? Typically, if in your test and in your exams, it says there's an application. You get, Barney also got kicked out, they must come back in again, not a problem. You get 30% discount on a 150 Rand article. Okay, so then you say 30 out of 100 multiplied by 150, and remember, anything that we have a full number of, we can just put it over 1, and then it will give us 45 Rand. Now, you could do that on your calculator. I mean, you're allowed to use a calculator, or you could simply get rid of the zeros by cross-canceling it. So 100 has 2 zeros, and there's a 0 in the 30, and there's also a 0 in the 150 above. And then you're just left with 3 times 15, and it's 45. So you would be able to do that calculation without a calculator. In the exam and the test, though, it's impossible to say to you that you are allowed to use your calculator for some things and not for other things. So basically, you will use your calculator. Like I always say to you, you must know how to use your calculator. I do not know your calculator, and so you must know how to use it. Okay, the problem now, though, is that the 45 Rand that you have just calculated now is the discount. Okay, so you now know what the discount is, but you don't want to care about what the discount is. You care about what am I going to pay for the article. So if you are on an Edgar's sale and there is a t-shirt that normally costs 150 Rand, and at Edgar's that's unlikely, so maybe rather Mr. Price, and now they have a 30% discount sale, you are going to pay 105 Rand for the article. Please remember, and I know you do it in bookkeeping, but you always calculate a discount or a markup on a VAT exclusive price, please. Never on the VAT inclusive price. Okay. Next thing we can do is we can express one number as a percentage of another. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we form a fraction, we multiply by 100, and we add a percentage sign. Okay, so 1 out of 4 is just a quarter, so it is 1. We turn it into a fraction, a quarter. We multiply it by 100, we get 25, and we add the percentage sign, and that is 25%. 6 out of 29, this is now out of, is 6 divided by 29, or 6/29th, if we turn it into a fraction. We multiply by 100, we get 20.69 around it, and we add the percentage sign, and so we can say it's 20.69. Please remember, if you have a number or two numbers like that with no indicators after the decimal, then if you round it, you'll round it off to 2 decimal. If they gave you 6.2 and 2.9, you would still be fine rounding it off by 2 decimals. But if they give you 2 decimals in each of the numbers, then possibly they want you to round it off to 4 decimals. But in any test, any assignment, any exam, please read the instructions. They will tell you how it must be rounded to how many decimal places. Okay. So how will it typically be asked? It can be asked like this. They say, in which year was the profit the most? Well, not the profit the most, the profit percentage the most. Okay, so in that little table, you are given the profit figures and you are given the sales figures. Now, in 2008, we say the profit was 288,000. Okay, out of the total sales of 720,000. Let's multiply that by 100 and add a percentage sign, and then we can see that it is 40%. So in 2008, our profit or our margin was 40%. In 2009, we had a profit of 450,000 out of the 900,000 turnover. We multiply that by 100 and add a percentage sign, and we get 50%. Or you could have just said, I can see by looking at it that 450,000 is half of 900,000 and a half is 50%. Doesn't matter. But here is the important thing, the most important thing by far. The numerator and the denominator must have the same unit. You cannot express a number as a percentage of another number if their units are not the same. So if the units are not the same, you turn them into the same unit first. Okay. So next thing we can do is we can calculate a percentage change. And here is the basic rule. The change is equal to, and I've given you 100 minus the new number over the old number multiplied by 100 over 1 to get a percentage, as in, and all of that in parentheses in brackets. Okay, so let's now just look at the way it is applied. There you see that sales increased from 900,000 in 2009 to 1,050,000 in 2010, and then it says calculate the percentage increase in sales. Now, if there is an increase, really, you would do it the other way around. You do the part in the bracket first, and then you would say minus 100, because you know there's an increase. But here we introduce something that's called an absolute value, which says it actually doesn't matter if you have do the 100 minus whatever you have in brackets, or whether you have the things in brackets and then you minus by 100, because you can ignore the minus sign, because percentage change is an absolute value. So it doesn't matter. We're not asking you if the percentage change was positive or negative, because that's in the question. They say sales increased from 900,000 in 2009. Okay, so let's now look at it. Remember, the rule says the new number. The new number is 1,050,000. The old number is 900,000. So therefore, if you multiply that by 100, you are obviously going to get a number of higher than 100. In this case, it is 116.67. You subtract 100 from that, and you get 16.67%. So what was the percentage increase in sales? It was 16.67%.